Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I want to thank my colleagues, Senator Cassidy and Senator Kennedy, who have been integral partners in our efforts here, and virtually the entire New Jersey House delegation that is represented here as well. And you'll hear from some of them shortly, but Congressman Pallone, the chairman of the House Commerce Committee, Congressman Pasquarello, Congressman Kim, Congresswoman Sherrill, Congressman Series, as well as several others who are going to be joining us, Congressman Van Drew, as well as several others who are going to be joining us shortly. So very important, obviously, to our state. I want to thank my colleagues for their leadership. Today we're putting forward a bold, bipartisan, and bicameral plan to reauthorize and reform the National Flood Insurance Program. 5 million Americans, including more than 220,000 New Jerseyans, depend on the NFIP to protect themselves from financial ruin in the event of flood damage. But as New Jerseyans learned after Superstorm Sandy, the program is riddled with dysfunction. As I often say, Sandy survivors faced more than just a devastating natural disaster. They faced a man-made disaster in the form of a flood insurance claim process that was stacked against them at every turn. My colleagues here today span the political spectrum and hail from entirely different regions of this country, and yet we all have horror stories to tell. We've witnessed the NFIP fail our constituents in the greatest hour of need. And after countless reauthorizations that simply kick a broken can down the road, we want real reform. The upcoming expiration on September 30th is a chance to fix what's broken. Today, the NFIP is plagued by soaring premiums and falling participation rates, waste and abuse that shortchanges flood victims and overcharges taxpayers, and chronic underinvestment in flood prevention and mitigation. Our plan includes real and lasting reforms that will, one, make premiums more affordable for low and middle-income Americans, including in high-cost states like New Jersey. It will strengthen sustainability by freezing interest payments and making real investments in mitigation. And finally, it will ensure fairness for consumers and more accountability for the insurance industry. As you all know, there's another bill currently moving through the House, and I certainly appreciate the effort to get flood insurance reauthorized, but I feel that it falls short in some areas. Our biggest challenge with the House legislation, it's not affordable. In fact, homeowner premiums will likely double every 4 years and possibly even sooner than that. Meanwhile, we've lived through circumstances with flood insurance, like in the past with Bigot Waters, where unintended consequences then exploded. And we addressed it here in the Senate in a bipartisan way. We have the makings of such a situation again. FEMA's new, untested, and secretive methodology known as Risk Rating 2.0 is a ticking time bomb that will explode rates once it takes effect next year. That's because if FEMA finds a homeowner faces greater risk under their new system, they could face a premium hike of up to 18% a year. Nothing in the House legislation protects families from the kind of shocking rate increases we saw after Bigot Waters in 2012. That's unacceptable, and I believe we can do better. And let me be clear, continually hiking premiums is not a path to sustainability. It's a death sentence. Huge rate increases will push even more homeowners to leave the program, rendering it defunct and ultimately saddling the federal government with even bigger disaster aid bills when the next big storm strikes. Our legislation ensures greater affordability by capping premium increases at 9% per year, half of the increase permitted by the House. We also provide means-tested affordability assistance to protect low and middle-income families. The House proposal also needs some real investments in mitigation. It makes no sense. We know that rebuilding communities after a disaster is far more expensive than preventing costly floods in the first place. In fact, evidence shows that every dollar spent on mitigation generates $6 in savings. That's why our legislation includes mandatory funding to buy out and elevate properties that repeatedly flood. We pay for it by freezing the debt interest payments that are straining the NFIP and making the whole program less affordable. Remember, most of this debt came from the failure of a federal flood levy during Hurricane Katrina. Freezing those payments opens up a world of possibility. We can spend those savings on more important things like lowering premiums, boosting enrollment, and preventing costly floods in the first place. Finally, unlike the House bill, we strengthen oversight over FEMA's insurance contractors and include real pro-consumer reforms. After Sandy, congressional hearings and investigations revealed a massive scandal in which flood victims were lowballed and outright denied by FEMA and their insurance companies. Countless Sandy survivors had to wait years to get back in their homes. Some are still waiting to this day. Our legislation gives policyholders a fair shake. We close ridiculous loopholes like the dreaded earth movement exclusion, because no, during a 13-foot storm surge, the soil under your home doesn't just move by itself. We impose deadlines on insurance companies to process flood claims and respond to appeals in a timely fashion, or else pay interest. We make it easier for FEMA to fire negligent contractors and require more training for agents and adjusters. And finally, we put an end to the for-profit litigation system that allowed attorneys to spend taxpayer dollars fighting legitimate claims in court. We need real reform. We don't need another Bigot Waters disaster in which skyrocketing rates leave families vulnerable for the next storm. That's simply too much at stake. With the National Flood Insurance Reauthorization and Reform Act of 2019, we can make the program more sustainable. We can ensure flood insurance is more affordable. We can hold FEMA and private accounts accountable. And instead of waiting for the next disaster to strike, we can invest in the kind of forward-looking mitigation that prevents costly flooding in the first place. Let me now turn over to Senator Cassidy, who, along with Senator Kennedy, both have been tremendous partners in this. They have real-life experiences of this challenge, and they have been singularly focused, along with me, on the Senate side to try to make this happen. I know Senator Cassidy will introduce Senator Kennedy, and then I'll have a couple of our House members from New Jersey.
Thank you, Bob. I'll echo, you've been a great partner to work with. And up here you'll see House and Senate, Democrat, Republican, Gulf Coast, Northeast Coast. And I tell folks that flooding is not a Republican issue. It is not a Democratic issue. If you flooded, it is an American issue. And I'll also add that if you want a program which is sustainable and accountable, that is an American issue. And we think we achieve that with this legislation. Now, I will say, within the last 2 years, there has been 10 short-term extensions to the NFIP. You could not come up with a better way to create uncertainty in certain real estate markets. You could not come up with a better way to dampen down homeowner prices and therefore the amount of income a community might receive from its property taxes. So I'm glad that Congress is making real progress for long-term reauthorization with real reforms to ensure affordability for homeowners. It protects taxpayers and improves the solvency of the program. It is a collective effort. Last Congress, it was Cassidy Gillibrand and Menendez-Kennedy, and now it is all of us together, coming up with a program which, again, as I mentioned earlier, is from 2 different regions, 2 different parties, and as you can see from the dais, 2 different chambers. Specifically, the legislation ensures that implementation of FEMA's Risk Rating 2.0 accurately reflects a property's unique flood risk while not compromising affordability. Now, just for the record, Risk 2.0 will no longer use flood maps and zones to determine a premium rate, but a series of models and statistical assumptions. It should give us a better rate, but it could lead, as Senator Menendez says, to an annual increase in premiums of up to 18%, compounded. I can tell you what happens. What happens when your premium goes up 18% per year? Quickly your premium becomes unaffordable. And somebody who's early on into a mortgage is just as likely to walk into the banker's office and drop keys upon the table saying, I can no longer afford this home, as opposed to stay in that home, staying with their insurance and paying premiums. To echo what Senator Menendez says, these reforms, by capping premium increases, make the program more sustainable. And by the way, we reduced that statutory cap to 9.0, but this is still above the 7.1% average increase that FEMA has previously implemented. Our cap is still greater than what they've been doing for the last several years. Secondly, we have real dollars for mitigation. It puts, as Senator Menendez says, a temporary freeze on NFIP debt, freeing up to $400 million a year for mitigation. What does that mean? Ty, do we have other copies of this picture? Here is, as one of my South Louisiana, Hurricane Barry just hit my state. That wall, as the parish president says, is a big, beautiful wall. On the other side of that big, beautiful wall is 9 feet of water. On this side, the worst it ever got was 1 foot of water. And during Hurricane Rita, where 10 to 11,000 homes in this parish flooded, in Hurricane Barry, with a 9-foot surge, only 10 homes flooded. And those flooded behind the portion of the levee system which has not yet been completed. Walls work. In this case, mitigation works. And so by putting $400 million per year into the mitigation project, if you will, a stitch in time saves 9. Or to put it more precisely, there's a Wharton study that says that for every $1 spent on mitigation, there's $6 saved in payouts after flooding. This wall works. Other mitigation works. So we put $400 million a year, which is far more than has ever been put before. Thirdly, the bill ensures that repetitive loss properties have a legitimate opportunity to mitigate prior to flood insurance premium increases. According to FEMA, about 1% of policies account for 25% of flood claims. We can address these in numerous ways, buy them out, elevate them, move them. But this legislation builds upon the 6% in disaster relief fund dollars set aside for the BRIC program. That is the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities program as established by the Disaster Recovery and Reform Act. And it allocates an additional 10% towards property-specific mitigation for repetitive loss properties. Let me conclude by saying the NFIP has 5 million flood insurance policies providing $1.2 trillion in coverage with approximately 23,000 communities with 56 jurisdictions and states participating. The NFIP is important to communities across the country. It is important that we address these priorities as part of the Senate effort to reauthorize the NFIP. And now I turn to my Louisiana colleague, Senator John Kennedy.
Thanks, Bill. As you undoubtedly have surmised by now, this is a bit of an overstatement. But this bill is basically a coupling of Bob and I's bill with Bill's and Kirsten's bill. And I think we took the best parts of both. I'm biased, of course, but I think this bill strikes a fair balance between financial integrity of the National Flood Insurance Program and affordability for policyholders. It doesn't do any good to offer flood insurance to people if they can't afford it. And that's certainly not going to make the program stable if you don't have any policyholders. Duh. Here's my message today to the United States Congress, more to the Senate than to the House, because the House has already acted on not on this bill, but at least on the subject area. So my message to Congress today, and to me included, I'm obviously a member of Congress, is do something. Please get up off your ice cold lazy butt and do something. We've been through 10 extensions, not 5, not 7, not 8, 10. Now, Senator Crapo is one of my best friends. I love him. He does an extraordinary job as head of the Banking Committee. But I have begged Mike, and I'm going to continue to beg him, put a bill in front of the committee. Now, I'd like him to put this bill in front of the committee, but put any bill in front of the committee, for God's sakes, and let us be senators, and let us offer amendments, and you might be surprised what we can do together. I'd like to start with this bill. I mean, the impossible is often the untried. And then let's bring this bill before the United States Senate. And let's offer amendments, and let's debate it, and let's see what we can do. Let senators be senators. I think our colleagues in the House have done a much better job of taking action This is a perfect example. Perception in politics is sometimes more important than reality. And this subject, at least as far as the Senate is concerned, flood insurance program is a good example of why so many Americans think that at least members of the Senate were born tired and raised lazy. No. Let me say it again. We need to do something. And I get the part about the Senate being created, you know, the saucer and the cooling and all of that stuff. And there is an advantage sometimes of being a crock pot. But enough is enough. We need a microwave here. And that's my message today. Let's get something passed.
Congressman Pallone. Certainly not born lazy and
You noticed I said the Senate, guys. I said the Senate.
I think Senator Menendez started out by saying that, you know, this was bringing people together from different parts of the country. But I wanted to say, oftentimes Louisiana is compared to New Jersey. And
I love it.
And the people from Louisiana, their leaders, are compared to New Jersey. So it's no surprise. I meant in a positive way. Don't take away. But let me just say a few things, and I'll try to be brief. First of all, I want to thank Senator Menendez. Ever since the Superstorm Sandy, and even before, of course, he has always been out there trying to help the people that suffered so much. And whether it's on an individual basis with his constituent services, or in proposing legislation, or getting the package together that was so hard with the $60 billion, he's always been out front, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate Bill Pascrell and the rest of my New Jersey colleagues from the House for being here as well. I just wanted to say, I wanted to talk briefly about three parts of this bill, and then I wanted to talk about the House and my colleague and friend Maxine Waters, because I think that some people have said to me, well, why are you introducing this bill in the House when in fact it's already come out of committee? So I wanted to answer that question. First of all, in terms of the three things I wanted to mention, you know, in the aftermath of Sandy, basically we heard three complaints about the flood insurance program. One was the whole claims process and so many instances of fraud with engineering reports and difficulty for people to take appeals and deadlines and the fine print. And Senator Menendez was out front on all that. So this bill is designed to deal with that, right? To say, you know, we don't want any more fraudulent reports. We want to go after the bad actors. We don't want fine print to prevent people from getting their compensation paid. And I think it does a very good job in that respect. The second thing is the fact that we need some kind of cap, a cap that's better than what's in the current law, because as was mentioned, you could go to 18% in over 4 years or so, you'll be doubling it. So cap on the amount of the premium, and also cap on the profits, a better cap on the profits of the insurance companies, so they can't make all kinds of profits. And then the third thing was with regard to the mitigation, which I think is so important, because when I talk to the homeowners who are impacted by Sandy or storms, they all say, well, can't we use this program in a way that prepares us so we don't have this damage? And I think this bill does a very good job in two ways. One is, well, there's a number of things, but I'm thinking of the state revolving loan fund, mitigation fund for mitigation purposes, and also the money that was mentioned for the mapping, because we have to have better mapping. So I think in all those ways, it's a great bill. Now, the last thing, though, I did want to say is this. Some people have said to me, okay, the Financial Services Committee has already reported out a bill. Why are you introducing a bill now in the House? The fact of the matter is that we have been working, when I say we, Pascrell and myself and others, we have been working with Maxine Waters over the last 6 months, trying to get some of the things that are in this bill, because this bill we introduced in previous Congresses, so we knew what we were trying to do, trying to get the cap, trying to get the claims process. Now, she's already done some things with regard to the fraudulent engineering reports, and also trying to get rid of bad actors and terminate bad actors that we've asked her to do. But the problem is the cap, and I know I'm going to sound very partisan, guys, but I can't help it. She would very much like to see the caps that are in this bill. She has said that, right? But she can't get the Republicans on her committee to go along with it. And she has said to me, look, you know, you're going to introduce this bill. Hopefully the Menendez-Cassidy bill becomes the base bill in the Senate, and then, you know, we'll see what we can do to improve our bill and make it more like yours. But if I can't get Republican support, pass it in the Senate, and then when we go to conference, we're working between the houses, I will try to be supportive of the things that you're trying to accomplish here, particularly with regard to the cap. So I wanted you to understand that we are continuing to work with her in trying to get some of these things in the bill before it goes to the House floor. And in absent, you know, total success, which I don't think we're going to have because, you know, her Republican leadership and her committee don't want to do a lot of these things, then if this passes the Senate, you know, she is saying that she will work with us to try to achieve that in whatever bill conference or, you know, consensus bill we have. So I did want to mention that because people have said, well, why are you doing this? And we are still in constant communications with her, and we're trying to get McHenry to go along with it as well. It's not just we're dealing with her. So I just wanted to mention that. But I really appreciate all that you're doing. And next is Bill Pascrell.
Good job.
Senators, thank you for bringing us together. Bob Menendez, we worked on this not just 6 months since Sandy, because a lot of people are affected all through the country. This is not a particular area, but we're concerned in New Jersey, where a lot of our people are, as Bob said, still out of their homes. Imagine that. And I'm glad, I say to Senator Cassidy, Senator Kennedy, we found a kind of wall we could agree on. So can't be bad. Can't be bad. So I thank you all for being here today to discuss reauthorizing national flood insurance program. And Senator Kennedy, we got to end hiccuping our way through this and get it done.
Yes.
I want to remind everyone here that we have not made major changes to the NFIP since Hurricane Sandy hit my district and the state. I remember touring the devastation like it was yesterday. Tremendous home damage, businesses destroyed, mold, the sand, the debris. And I spoke with my constituents a number of times who saw their entire lives swept away in an instant. And I vowed that they never to stop fighting for them. While others came for a photo op, I've been here with New Jersey delegation, especially with my brother, Chairman Frank Pallone and Senator Bob Menendez, from the very beginning. This was not any one paragraph. This is not one photo. This is talking about work. The same kind of work that the first responders do when this tragedy occurs. And we say it because, you know, we're intellectually superior. So we can't get out of our own way most of the time. So I'm a first responder. I looked at it that way. And as you see here today, we're introducing bipartisan, bicameral legislation to build our commitment. I'd like to highlight a few policies that I think will help policyholders and save taxpayer money. A constituent of mine, Mabel Richardson, revealed to me that my hometown of Paterson, New Jersey, where I've lived all my life, did not have accurate flood maps, causing her home to be in a flood zone. You know, when that happens, you know how much more you have to pay. But she was forced to pay thousands each year into the NFIP. Her home was not actually in a flood-prone area. How do those things happen? But her home was not actually in a flood-prone area. I worked with Mabel and FEMA to learn that decades-old, hand-drawn maps, many of you are in the same situation, you don't even know it, were used to design the maps. These maps should have been accurate from day one. Our bill invests $400 million per year for state-of-the-art technology to map the entire country. You would be shocked to know how much of this country has not been remapped, almost like to the Civil War. These maps should have been accurate. Our bill gets in front of the pending risk rating. You've heard the senators talk about that. 2.0 problem hanging over policyholders. FEMA's new untested risk model will fundamentally alter premiums on every policy in the country. This could cause a rate explosion like we saw after the Biggert Waters Act of 2012. Costs skyrocketed, policyholders were hurt, the real estate market was disrupted. We don't want this to happen to anyone. We have a protocol. We can see what's happened with that last legislation of 2012. Not people like Mabel with wrong risk assessments or low-income policyholders that cannot afford a premium hike each year. That is why our bill caps premiums at 9%. This issue is right on our doorstep. FEMA will jack rates up, and I want to be able to tell my constituents I fought, along with many others of my brothers and sisters in the Senate and the House, I fought for a lower rate. In my state, the claims process was screwed up from the start of Sandy. People had to flee their homes for days and weeks. They lived in motels. Sometimes they lived in their cars. During this time, mold grew because feet of water lingered in the homes they left behind. These individuals filed damage claims, but a justice told them they were irresponsible for failing to maintain the property after the flood. I said, that's impossible. Say that again. Can you believe that? It is outrageous to tell someone running for their lives that they should have gone back to their home to prevent mold damage. That is not an exaggeration of the situation. That's what it is. Our bill clarifies the mold damage issue for survivors in the aftermath of a storm. I hope everyone sees that we put serious thought and effort into the legislation. We owe it to the Sandy victims. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to be here with the folks standing in back of me. Frank and I have one of our objectives is to not get involved in something unless you finish the job on other things as well. And we are going to see this through, and we couldn't have better partners in the fight. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now, Bob?
Yeah. We want to get to your questions, but there may be one or two other colleagues who've taken the time. If anybody wants to make some brief statements, welcome to Senator Andrew.
Hello, I'm Congressman Jeff Van Drew, one of the newly elected congressmen. And I guess I have a certain vision of all this because I come from deep South Jersey, Cape May County, Atlantic County, part of Ocean County, Cumberland County, areas that were most profoundly affected by all of this. And particularly I remember when I was a state senator meeting with our county commissioners, our freeholders, and Biggert Waters had been revealed. And we didn't, quite frankly, know anything about it. We didn't know what to make of it. And there was extreme concern. Understand, and I know there's a tremendous amount of important issues that have been spoken about today. One of the most important issues, if not the most important issue, is the financial issue. What happens here is if this is not straightened out, real estate will be devalued. If real estate sales are devalued, then the realty transfer tax revenues are going to go down in New Jersey, and this I'm sure is similar in other states. The realty transfer tax revenues are used for beach mitigation, used for dune creation, used for maintaining our beaches, and are extremely important. One of the largest industries in, again, South Jersey and the Cape May, Atlantic City, Atlantic County area is the real estate agency. The real estate industry is huge, and we depend upon it a lot for revenues. They make a big difference. They will be significantly hurt. They were significantly hurt last time. And let me tell you, this is not about rich people with big houses. This is about commerce. It's about business. It's about industry that's located close to the water. It is also about homes that average people live in, and the other homes are homes that people take care of, and their full-time jobs are taking care of them and working on them. This is really, truly important for the future of the country and for the future of our economy, and we have to deal with it. I can't say it as well as the senator did. I got to learn some of those sayings because he drove the point home. There's sometimes people, there we go, I'm deep, you got it. And I kind of say things a little bit in a blunt way as well. It's time. People want us to do something. They want us to get this done. It's our responsibility. So let's just get it done and get it done in a way that we don't hurt people. That's our job as elected officials. I really want to thank the senator, Senator Menendez, and taking charge and taking the lead on this and caring about our part of the state so much. I want to thank Senator Cassidy and Senator Kennedy, and of course my good friend for many years, Frank Pallone, and my other friend here as well, who have all really taken this on their shoulder and are going to try to move it forward. I'm telling you, as far as I'm concerned, I may be a freshman legislator. In fact, I am. But I am going to push as hard as I can and do anything I can. And if it comes to the point that I have to say things that are a little bit embarrassing or a little bit inappropriate or whatever, I will do it, because this is a big deal. And sometimes people don't realize it because they come from parts of the state where they don't understand the impact. If we go down, all these areas that are close to the water, I'm 65% surrounded by water. One of my counties is a peninsula. If we go down, the country goes down. This has to be done. And I want to thank you all for the work that you've done.
Thank you. Senator Kennedy is one of the most quotable members of the Senate.
I think he is.
Congresswoman Cheryl, and then we'll get to questions.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Senator Menendez, for all of your hard work on this. Thank you, Chairman Pallone. Congressman Pascrell, I know you've been working for years to rectify these flooding problems. I would never presume, like my colleague, Senator Kennedy, to tell the Senate to get off its cold butt and ice cold butt and do something about this. But I certainly echo the sentiment that we must get this accomplished. What many people don't realize is Passaic County, where myself and Congressman Pascrell are, has some of the worst flooding in the state with the Peckman and Passaic rivers. So this is critical to people throughout my district. And I just would love to get this done in the House. I think this Senate bill is really where we need to go. And I appreciate all of you who've shepherded it through. And thank you, Senator Cassidy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Questions? Yes.
Just curious about there's $1 billion of additional money for mitigation of these issues, and also you're obviously capping, depending on how you rephrase this, more generously than the House bill, protecting the ratepayers more. So where does the cost go to? Where does the money come to provide essentially a more generous?
Well, we freeze the $400 million interest payments annually that we are paying ourselves. The government is paying themselves $400 million on the principal amount. That was largely created, as I said, that deficiency was created by a federal failure of a levee in Louisiana. And so we don't think that a federal failure should create the basis for interest payments on a debt that ultimately we're paying to ourselves. So we are, in essence, undermining the financial stability of the program. That freezing, plus what we save in mitigation, as you heard from several of my colleagues, for every dollar spent, we save $6. The confluence of those gives us the wherewithal to have the resources that we need for what we want to do, both on cost containment and whatever. Bill, come on.
Something else we do that we think helps the program is we actually increase the coverage limit that someone can get. Right now it's capped at $250,000. We raised that. Now you may say, wait a second, that increases the exposure of the federal taxpayer. But I'm looking at my staff. I think my staff told me that the average payout in Sandy was $80,000. So if you think about it, if I'm buying coverage for $1 million, but I only get $80,000, I'm actually paying more premiums than I'm going to pull down. I'm going to buy it for that catastrophic loss, but I'm actually going to be paying more into the program net than collectively we will be drawing down. So we have some innovative ways that we think will improve the solvency and allow an improvement of the benefit. So for the record, my eyes were dilated, so I'm not trying to...
Jonathan.
First of all, I think the quote was ice cold lazy, but.
That's true.
I mean, I've been here for years. I've covered from all the press conferences with you, Senator Menendez. They've had 10 extensions of this. How come it hasn't gotten done yet, and what's going to change now to get it done?
I'm happy to have any of my colleagues join me. Let me take a first bite of that. Look, this is a complicated issue. This isn't simple. There's a lot of different elements here, from mitigation to cost containment to consumer protections to the insurance industry's participation to a federal agency that now is in the midst of a new rating where we don't really know how they will weight the different factors. While it should give us a greater sense of risk, but it depends upon how you weight those risks. Those are all incredibly intricate details. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, of course, whenever we involve with costs, there's always an issue in that. But the bottom line is when I responded with some of my colleagues here to the Biggert-Water rate shock, we brought together Republicans and Democrats in the Senate from different parts of the country, not just Louisiana. Senator Rubio's with us on this bill. By the end of this week, several other senators from both sides of the aisle will be on this bill. They will be Senator Scott's with us. That's South Carolina. So the bottom line is several, by the way, members of the Banking Committee where this has jurisdiction, including several of us here on the stage. So the bottom line is that I think there's a confluence of events that leads us to believe that we've got a good shot. Number one, we have another deadline, a deadline that people don't want to just kick the can down the road. Number two, we've come with a broad, bipartisan, substantive response, which proved true the last time we did this to be successful in the Senate. And number three, I think that none of us want to be here a year from now, past just a continuing extension of the program give it 5 years, and in a year from now when rate shock comes, oh my God, we'll all be, racing to respond to that rate shock as we did under Biggert-Waters. We're foreseeing that. We're telling people about it. The more attention people have to the process and understanding the rate shock that could be envisioned, I think the more colleagues that will join us in this effort. So I think we're in a good shape. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Senator Kennedy.
look, there are a couple of reasons. I can only speak for the Senate. Once again, the House has passed something, and I hope they'll pass this bill quickly. But in terms of the Senate, number one, and I'm thankful for this, some of my colleagues don't live in states that flood, and I'm happy for them. But the truth of the matter is, for whatever reason, we're having a lot more heavy rain events, and I don't care where you live. I don't care if you can't find a body of water near you with a search party or a map. If you get 20 inches of rain in 2 days, you're going to flood. I don't care if you live on Pikes Peak. And that's just a fact. And those events, for whatever reason, are happening more and more and more and more. Number two, I think some of my colleagues in the Senate, our colleagues in the Senate, they don't understand the program. I'm not criticizing them. We're all, busy. We all have other things to do besides just worry about flood insurance. But it is important. And some of my colleagues think that flood insurance is only for wealthy people to insure their beach home. Now, that's not the case. It's not the case in my state. It's not the case in New Jersey. I'm not saying that there aren't some people who are wealthy who buy flood insurance, but most of the people who use flood insurance in my state are working men and working women. And if you jack their rates up 20%, they can't pay it, folks. They're going to take the keys and say, congratulations, you just bought yourself a house, because I'm not paying the note anymore. And this bill strikes a very good balance between affordability and financial integrity of the program. And with that, I got to go. But anyway, this is a swell bill.
And I'll speak a little bit less colorfully than John, but in more detail. We're from coastal states, but there's a lot of flooding in riverine systems. When I looked at this, when we did the Biggert-Waters, the Grimm-Cassidy amendment to Biggert-Waters, which Senator Menendez was involved with, I was on the House side. I looked, Pennsylvania was one of the states that had more claims than other states when it came to flooding, because they have these riverine systems, and you have a lot of rain. I remember Steve Pierce, who was from New Mexico. He said, I had a creek on top of a mountain, and it got a big rain, and it flooded everybody. And the creek was only this wide. Well, that was the problem. The creek was only that wide, and they had a lot of rain. So I think that you look at those riverine states, they also have a problem. But lastly, this is also about affordability for the federal taxpayer. And so whether or not you live in a state which floods or not, you still want affordability and sustainability and accountability for the federal taxpayer.
And to that point, last time we dealt with a Biggert-Waters rate shock, North Dakota, they had a different problem. They had basements that were what they considered basements, incredibly important as shelters for them, that would get flooded. They weren't covered under the legislation. They were brought into the fold. So there are many different other individuals. Congressman Kim has a few remarks.
Hi, I'm Congressman Andy Kim from the New Jersey 3rd Congressional District and represent both Burlington County and Ocean County, where a lot of people are still not back in their homes after Superstorm Sandy, and Burlington County, where we just had some flooding just a couple weeks ago that was devastating to the communities. Speaking from the House perspective, I think that there is a lot of energy on this, a lot of bipartisan support that we're echoing from the leadership in the Senate, and certainly amongst some of the newer colleagues and a lot of the conversations I've been having. I think the mitigation component of this is critical. I think that is where we are understanding that for our country, for the families that are suffering from this, that is where we need to put our foot forward and making sure we're not constantly trying to reinvent the wheel after every single disaster that's out there. I think that's an element of this that can get a lot of bipartisan support, and I look forward to working in the House alongside my colleagues to be able to do that.
Thank you. I think our time is up here, how much time we get to reserve here.